Hello and welcome to another episode of the VCDX Podcast, a short bi-weekly podcast focused on the VCDX certification with news, updates, advice and special guests. My name is Simon Long, VCDX number 105, and I'm currently away travelling in Europe at the moment, so please excuse the poor audio quality and my lack of voice throughout this episode. In this episode I'll be chatting to my special guest about their VCDX defence experience, what things went well, and what didn't go so well. Here's a taste of what's coming up.
You're only in there for 45 minutes, so really showing that you can fill that board and go from capturing requirements in those pieces to going through a conceptual design and then a logical design, and you can fill the board and show that progress. I think that's really the key thing that you need to be able to demonstrate, and I certainly did that. The board was full of stuff.
If you cover things well and clearly in the document, sometimes you won't actually get questions on a section you think you might, because the document answers all the questions we have.
I think they understand you're under pressure. You're not going to be perfect at doing this.
So heading into the news and updates section, I'm pleased to announce that we have 5 new VCDXs that we need to congratulate in this episode. So in numerical order, VCDX number 279, Dmitri Tanurkov, congratulations in achieving the NV VCDX certification. VCDX number 280, Veronica Sherin Davis, congratulations to you in receiving the NV as well. Number 281, congratulations Chris Porter, getting the DCV. 282, Syed, Adeel, Qamar, congratulations on receiving the NV certification. And VCDX 283, Fouad EL Akkad, congratulations on getting the DCV. And we mustn't forget Jeffrey Koosters, VCDX number 252. You were originally a DCV VCDX and you now just received your second VCDX in NV, so congratulations Jeffrey as well for getting your second VCDX. It's always great to see so many of the VCDX defence panels coming out with success and passing their VCDX, so congratulations again to you all. It's a great achievement. And for those of you who may not have passed this time, definitely don't give up. Give yourself some downtime, have a bit of a breather, and then go again. You'll get it next time. Just to let you know, there's an up-and-coming VCDX workshop which will be held at the Indianapolis VMUG on the 16th of July. So if you're going to be attending that VMUG or you're interested in going to a VCDX workshop, definitely check that out. I'll put a link to the registration in the show notes for you. And if you're not familiar with the VCDX workshops and what they are all about, definitely recommend listening to the guest interview on the VCDX Podcast episode 2. That's all I have for this week's news and updates. Let's head into the guest interview. You're listening to the guest interview on the VCDX Podcast. Who is this episode's special guest? Give me your name and your number.
My name is Chris Porter and I am VCDX 281.
Woohoo! For those listeners who didn't manage to listen to episode 3 of the VCDX Podcast, we had Chris on as our special guest just before his VCDX defense. And now, Chris, I'm pleased to welcome you back as a VCDX. Congratulations, mate. That's a great achievement.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me back on. Yeah, I can't really stop smiling at the moment. So yeah, it's brilliant to get up this far, put all the work in, and then got that number.
Yeah, I bet it hasn't sunk in because you only found out a few days ago, right? So it probably hasn't even sunk in yet.
Yeah, it's not really. No, I keep sort of thinking of other things and then remembering it, and then still just getting rid of the withdrawal symptoms and remembering the defence itself. So yeah.
So I thought it'd be good to have you back on as soon as possible after your defence, so everything is fresh and raw in your mind, and the pain may still be there. And I had a few questions. I think it'd be good to go through, ask you, and get some of your feedback that may help other people who are also kind of preparing. So, is there anything that sticks out in your mind about your defence, good or bad, or maybe both? Did anything go better than you'd hoped, or was there something that you'd probably needed more prep on that you maybe didn't prep enough for?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, I felt like the defence I'd stuffed up in a few places and it hadn't gone particularly well. I think that's general feedback. Many people don't come out of that room bouncing around.
Mm-hmm, true.
I knew I'd done all right in places. A few places I would have liked to have done better, but I think all in all, generally the prep I'd done and the presentation I had actually worked quite well. And where some people get questions within 1 or 2 slides, some people get all the way through. I'd got quite a way in and then kind of got questions. So
Yeah.
I'd reordered my slide deck almost last minute, just and moved some bits that I really was maybe afraid of talking about, to sort of actually move them earlier on and just crack them straight away. So yeah.
And did you find those bits that you moved earlier on, you didn't get any questions on them anyway, so it was maybe something you were worried about that you shouldn't have been, or did you get questions on them?
Yeah, I think so, certainly. My design had stretch clusters in, and stretch clusters to meet a disaster recovery requirement. And there's a lot of people that will argue that doesn't meet that. It's more for disaster avoidance. And I was well aware of that. So actually in my design, I'd gone quite deep in the document about justifying why that met those DR requirements and why there was and mitigating the risks that are associated with that. And I wanted to hit that head on in the presentation. But I think because I'd covered it quite well in my document, there weren't really any questions on that. So yeah,
I think that's something, like, certainly from a panelist perspective, I think if you cover things well and clearly in the document, and the document is a 1,000 pages long to the point where we can't actually all get through it in the review session, sometimes you won't actually get questions on a section you think you might, because the document answers all the questions we have. So there's no point in asking questions about something that we clearly about, and clearly makes a lot of sense and the reasons why you've done it. So it's probably a good point for people to realize is if you do good document from the get-go, you might get a lot less awkward questions in your defense when you're feeling the pressure a bit more as well.
And I think it's worth, maybe in my preparation, one of the things I would have thought about earlier is really have someone review your design or review the design yourself, go through and think, where are the areas where I haven't covered, maybe in as much depth as I'd like, or just weren't in the requirements, and just make sure you don't have to write a new design for those pieces, but just make sure you're up to speed on some of those areas. So whether it's certain types of software that isn't in your environment, whether it's certain compliance requirements, certainly GDPR, PCI, HIPAA, all those kind of things. Just be aware of some of those things, and so that you weren't just avoiding it in your design because you don't know about it. You can answer a few questions on those pieces.
Yeah, definitely, and you never know those GDPR. Especially if you're, someone in the UK, and often a lot of the people in the US may not fully understand what GDPR, because it's not necessarily affect them directly. You may get questions like that in the design scenario as well. So it's always good to just have a general understanding of what that is and what that might involve in your design as well, if someone brings that up as a requirement.
Yeah, and I think also one of the pieces that I did some prep on, but I think would have been useful to do a bit more prep on, was just a bit more of an understanding of some of the other VMware products. Just, I think you need to know kind of certainly NSX, VRAR, those kind of pieces. Just look at kind of what the use cases they are and what they meet. And I think I knew that, but then just a basic deployment of those things, how that might influence a design. I did DCP, so you don't need to know them anywhere near the depth of a CMA or NV design, but those things do meet requirements that customers are going to come up with.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of typical for an architect to understand those technologies as well, especially if you're working with multiple customers, that you may go in and they may have a requirement for something. Just having an understanding of what their product does at a high level is good to just be able to have a conversation with the customer. And then if it's, find out it's something that they need, then you can start to figure out, okay, what are the requirements for this product? How do we deploy this? What are our compute memory resources that we need for those components and things. So it's very difficult, because it's like, you often get the question, well, where do you stop? You've got the VMware products, which obviously are growing more and more every day, the more products they keep bringing out. And then some people also feel that, knowing a lot of the third-party products or what the competition is as well is something that's quite beneficial to them. But as I say, you've only got so much time in your life that you can do that. So I'd say definitely understand the VMware products and what they are and what they can do for the customer, and then if you have extra time, figure out some of the competition and the other options out there, that maybe add some benefit to the customer as well. So I think that's a really good point there, Chris. So in terms of your defense and your design, you feel like when you come out of them, I think you kind of said that you felt okay. You never feel 100% that everything went swimmingly well, but I know for me, when I did mine, I came out and you kind of think, well, yeah, it could have gone a little bit better, but I think that went pretty well, and it sounds like that's how it went for you. I mean, was it the same for in your design scenario as well?
So I think the defense itself, there's a couple of questions that will probably haunt me forever. And I think I had a lot of backup slides, and I used a few of them, but some, and then I was asked to sketch things out on the whiteboard, and I think I did all right with that. It wasn't perfect on the whiteboard, but I think they understand you're under pressure. You're not going to be perfect doing this. So,
no,
and then I think in the scenario, I had a really difficult scenario, I think, and they really challenged me, and clearly they were looking for areas to cover in the design. If you haven't covered one area, then they're going to push you on that area if you haven't covered it in your design. I think a good example there is if you've done, say, a hyper-converged environment in your design, then really in this scenario, they may be looking for other things, but they may be pushing for kind of a traditional storage array design. And really, as an architect, you should know that at a high level. If there's a constraint around not using hyperconverge or the other way around, then you need to be able to answer authoritatively about that kind of piece. So
definitely, like from a score perspective as well, if we know that hyperconverged, we may turn around and say, let's say we can get your score even higher by going to a different type of storage architecture, and then go from there. So it's not like we want to try and make things even more difficult for you. It's like, well, okay, you clearly know about HCI, great. What do you know about just a normal SAN array type architecture? Let's take it that direction, and then we can try and score you up from there as well. So that's the kind of reason why we often, not always, as you say, we'll sometimes stick to the same kind of type of design if we feel that we need to get more information from you, but we may try and almost reverse the design and point you in a direction it is almost the opposite, just to see what and what you can understand, and try and score you even better. So it sounds like that's kind of what happened for you in your defense too.
I think it's certainly what happened. But I think what I took confidence in a way, and we talked about this in the previous podcast about part of my prep, was actually having a methodology for the design scenario. And whilst I don't think I answered it like perfectly in a technical piece, you're only in there for 45 minutes. So in a real world, you'd have follow-ups, you'd have lots of different meetings. Yeah. So really showing that you can fill that board and go from capturing requirements in those pieces to going through a conceptual design and then a logical design, and you can fill the board and show that progress. I think that's really the key thing that you need to be able to demonstrate. And I certainly did that. The board was full of stuff. Yeah,
I think it's very important for people to understand who are preparing for it, is that we never are really looking for a finished design in the design scenario. As Chris said, you've got 45 minutes to do a lot of investigation work, because we don't necessarily give you that much information on the slides that you get shown. So you're never going to get a design in 45 minutes, so we don't expect that to happen. And sometimes we'll just point you in the directions that we want you to go. If we need to go into the physical for whatever reason, then we'll may push you into that quicker, whereas some other people, we know they're absolutely fine with the compute and memory side of things. We'll take them into the security side of things, and then we'll spend more time there. And you may come out there thinking, well, I don't even get down to doing a design or finishing the design. That's not always a problem. It's us trying to find out what essentially. So yeah, I think that's pretty good for a lot of people to understand. So Chris, what was the most enjoyable part of the VCDX certification process for you? And also on the flip side, what was the least enjoyable part?
Yeah, so I think enjoyable part is really, I think it's almost become a bit of a cliche in the VMware environment, but it's so true in terms of the enjoyable part for me is being engaging with the community and finding like-minded people, just being part of the Slack workspace that Greg Robertson runs. And it's just lots of people there working with mocks, talking and discussing with people, working with other people in the community, other VCDX, getting reviews, just getting advice, little pieces. That's been really, really nice. And that I think certainly been probably the most enjoyable part. And then I think enjoyable has been those little moments where you find out your design has passed the technical review, and then when you find out you've passed, and that was a really fun moment. I think least enjoyable. I remember kind of specific moments when I was really against the wire trying to get the design in, and just like reviewing my stats of my current state analysis and how that had built. That's the kind of foundation of the whole design, and I just realized I think I had some figures wrong, and I was just like tearing my hair out.
Right.
It was horrible. Yeah. And I, whether that's important or not, I don't know, but I just remember one moment I almost kind of was sat in a cafe and I was just like just wanted to sling my laptop across the place. It was like just tearing my hair out, certainly.
That's interesting that the most least enjoyable part was just preparing the app, your design for sending in for the the application side of it, rather than most people's is like the defense, like that was not fun, and yours is just like, yeah, I just realized I wanted to send in a doc, it wasn't completely done, and I missed something, and it's like, am I going to get going to hit the deadline, and kind of that pressure on that, because I mean it is every 3 months, so it's if you did miss that, it's like, I've got to wait 3 more months now, and probably you would sit there looking at the design for the next 3 more months when you really probably didn't need to as well. So I can kind of see how that might be a little bit painful.
I think that's an example of kind of how bad like some parts of that were for me. It was a real struggle at times. And don't get me wrong, the defense was nervy. I kind of knew that was going to happen, and it was going to be nervy. It wasn't a walk in the park by any means. But yeah,
that's good.
It's hard work throughout.
Yeah, definitely is. And for those of you who are wondering what the Slack channel is that Chris was mentioning earlier, if you tune into the next episode, which should be coming out in a couple of weeks' time, we'll have Greg Robertson on, and he'll be talking all about it and how you can get access to the VCDX Prep Slack channel. So, Chris, now knowing what you know, and if you could go back in time, back to when you were preparing for the VCDX, which I guess for you is probably only a week ago, but what pieces of advice would you give yourself now?
I think maybe the first piece of advice is, have I considered a different career? Is it really something you want to do?
Yeah.
No, I think I'm fairly comfortable with the approach I took and what I did. So I don't think there's any big gotchas, and I think part of that would be just stick with it. And the hard work will pay off. And I think certainly some people put more hard work in than others. And some people they change job as well to get that experience. For me, I'm not necessarily being a consulting role where I don't have lots of experience and an opportunity to practice these things. That's where you put the hard work in. That's where you do the mocks and the practice and the reading, and you really study the documents and talk to people. So, and I think that helped me to kind of somewhat level up to people that do this day in, day out.
Yeah.
And going back to that point about tearing my hair out, I think I would say to myself is not worry as much as I did about the numbers.
Yeah.
I think I was trying to get this trying to make it all work, and actually trying to work through the design and show your methodology and learn, spending time just focusing on the current state and the getting the numbers to make sense is you need a solid base, but equally you're not trying and find these corner cases to make it work for everything. So I think I would have maybe changed some of the focus there. And then just probably start with time management earlier. I know I in July last year, I sort of sat down and really assessed how I was spending my time and working, and a much more structured approach. And it would have been better to sort of start that earlier. But yeah.
So I think we talked about that in the last episode when we had you on as well, is figuring out how much time that you can commit to it with work pressures and family pressures and other commitments and things, and then adjust your timeline based on how much time you really could put forward to it. If you have a lot of spare time, then you can get it done a lot quicker. If you know that you don't have that much spare time, then don't put that added pressure on you to get it done quicker, because you'll ultimately just end up in a bit of a state trying to force it, and it just won't happen that well.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice in terms of that kind of that high level view of the time you need. But I think for me, where I really changed was kind of in the micro view of that, in terms of I was using an app called Toggle, and that allowed me just to click a timer when I was working and then stop that when I'd finished, like half an hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes on the train, or a couple of hours, whatever. And then at the end of the week, I could look back and see that actually I had put 10 or 15 hours or whatever into it, or I'd only done a couple of hours, so I need to put some more in. And so trying to keep yourself honest, and it doesn't need to be over the top and lots of detail, just something so you can kind of track what you're doing and keeping yourself honest that you are putting time into it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I'll put a link to the show notes for that app as well, Chris. So I'll get that information from you. That it would have been quite useful for me, I think, when I was doing mine, because I almost dread to think how many hours additional I put in on top of the customer's design that I used as well. I've been interested to look back and go, yeah, that's how many hours I put in for that. But so now you have all this free time on your hands. Dare I ask what's next for you now? Now that you've passed the VCDX, are you looking for downtime for a bit? Dusting off the bike, or what's next for you, Chris?
Yeah, so certainly some downtime, sort of spending time with the family again, kind of starting to tackle the to-do list that's grown over time. So there'll be a shed that needs to be painted and things, and socializing as well. I sort of stopped a lot of socializing, seeing friends and things like that. So kind of catching up with people I haven't seen for a while. I'm going to your gig. I'm going to see Foles at Ali Pali in a couple of weeks. That would be fun. Cool. And then what we talked about, catching up on TV. So I whilst I was keeping on top of Game of Thrones, I couldn't spend the time watching the last episode. So I did catch up with that last week after Defending. That was my reward, I think. So finishing that.
But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there, and it's nice for you to not feel that you can't sit down and watch some of these TV shows now without the little thing tapping on your shoulder. Well, you could be doing some prep, and it's you can sit down and enjoy yourself now. So Chris, again, congratulations. Give us your VCDX number again.
281. Just to finish that point off as well, I think I will be kind of certainly the Slack workspace and things like that, just looking towards mentoring and giving back to the community that's given me so much support myself.
That is great, Chris. We need more people to help mentoring. There's a lot of really smart people out there who have been through this, and it'd be great to be able to get that information passed down to the people who've got this to come. So if you are looking for a mentor, and feel free to reach out to Chris. Chris, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way? Through Twitter?
Yeah, so I'm Upright Vinyl on Twitter, or just search me, Chris Forson. My DMs are open, so just ping me. So I'm trying to work out what mentoring looks like, and a bit of a break at the moment, and just help people out with the odd query and stuff like that. And then kind of when I get a bit more free time. I've got free time now. When I feel what I want to get back into it in the next week or a few months. Yeah, then we're sort of doing that a bit more seriously.
Perfect. Chris, thanks again for joining us again on part 2 of your interview. Take it easy, mate, and enjoy your time now.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
So we just got time for some Q&A before we round out the show, and I had a question come through from Simon Z asking about the VCDX support and documentation, so installation guide, for example. Now, the VCDX blueprint states that it should be detailed enough for someone who is certified at VCP level to be able to deploy your design. And his question is it required to do all of the screenshots, or can we just write short sentences and sequence of tasks? Now, the word on the street is that if you don't have screenshots in your installation guide, your documentation is automatically not accepted. Now, from a personal experience, I would say that this is not true. I have seen supporting documentation that doesn't have screenshots in it, but has enough detail for someone who is a VCP level to be able to deploy the design itself. This is true of my own VCDX design. In my supporting documents, I didn't necessarily have many screenshots, but I had links to VMware documentation for how to install and configure vCenter, for example. And then I had links to the architecture design document sections, which documented the IP configurations like the DRS configuration, HA configuration, etc. So someone who is VCP level can look at the VMware installation document, follow the steps that are documented very well from the vendor, and then where we need to fill in information such as IP addresses or change configurations, they can then reference the architecture design document. So it doesn't always require screenshots. One thing I will say though, if you're planning on using templated documentation, which a lot of people do use, just make sure you update the documentation. So if your design has a feature that you don't have in your templated documentation, make sure you add that feature and configuration, and vice versa. If your templated documentation has a configuration for a feature or a product that you don't use within your design, be sure to remove it. There has to be a direct correlation between the architecture design document and your supporting documentation. I hope that answers your question, Simon. And if anyone else has any other questions, they want me to answer on the podcast, you can contact me on Twitter at SimonLong_, or you can send me a message via my website, www.simonlong.co.uk, and go to the contact me page. That's all we have time for this episode of the VCDX podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please be sure to subscribe and share it with others who might find this podcast interesting. And I'll speak to you in 2 weeks' time.